good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, we've just recently had a couple of meetings with the students, the kids that we have on our education program, education support program, and we try to equip them to be able to go online. So they need all kinds of stuff, which we try to support and get to them so that they can have an education, because we've decided, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, really? We've decided that we can actually bring about greater change more quickly by affecting the education of the people that we are trying to help. And in this particular case, it means that we're looking at the youngsters. Now, some of them are thinking in a certain way which they're going to have to change. Now, obviously, when you get into this kind of thing, you're trying to change people. You're trying to change them for the better. Who says it's for the better? Well, you give people the choice, and this is what, if you looked at the videos, which actually were very moving videos, because we got the kids that were on those videos to share a little of their life, and some of them had pretty tragic stories to tell. Stories of divorce, stories of abandonment when the step-parent, be the step-parent male or female, stepmother or stepfather, but one of the parents would have gone and found another, maybe before the marriage was broken, have found another partner to live with, and that other partner might already have children of their own, and they don't always get along with the children from the new partner. And sometimes, as we've seen in some of the people that we've helped, this means that children can be abandoned. If you watched the building of the house for Lola, Lola we found living in a tiny little house that was barely a house. It had one, I think it had one or two or 1.5 walls, and the rest were just tarpaulins, pretty well pinned or tied to what was left of the other supports, and the other supports weren't doing too well either. And we were shocked to find that in this tiny little house, which was like maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, believe it or not, this old lady, Lola, had taken in 3 abandoned children. Now, 2 of them were actually her grandchildren, but one of them was not. One of them she had taken in because the deed was there and it had to be done. Now, those kids are going to have to change the way that they think in order to be able to survive and to grow. And we found that with the kids that we asked the kids, we would like you, first of all, each one of them, we said, we'd like you, pick one out, just go from left to right, right to left, and everybody gets to tell the story. Tell us your name, introduce yourself, and where you're at with your education, and how did you arrive in this point of your life. Tell us a little about yourself so that we can know you. These are bonding sessions, let's face it. As soon as you know something about a person, you're probably willing to overcome any, small prejudice that you may have had. You may have thought that, well, that person is too handsome, too ugly, too anything for me. Making these judgments which are ahead of time and which are ahead of common sense. When the person shares something about their life, then it changes the way that you think of them. Now here's the other point. When people tell these stories are not written in stone. Now, what Beth and I are trying to do in helping and supporting students, young kids who, we actually know, some of these kids we know well because we've known them for 2 or 3 years and supported them in many other ways with food and clothes and at church, and now we're supporting them in education. Well, we know them and we're quite familiar with them, and they know and are familiar with us. And then there are others who have just arrived on the doorstep. 2 very recently, Rika and Mency. They just arrived early one morning and asked for help. And that was how much we know them. Now, as we find out their stories, one thing that we saw, and that you will see if you look at the video, we saw that all of the pain is still there. Now, in the telling of your story, you should be releasing emotions which are pent up, denied, suppressed. This is why sometimes they call it having a shoulder to cry on. In that if you're incredibly shocked by something that happens, you should have a friend that you can go to and say, look, I need to be able to talk. And the best kind of friend is the one that knows when to talk and when to be quiet and listen. That's why listening is a great therapeutic ability for you to be able to do for someone else. Now, I've given this example once before, but it is so applicable to what I'm talking about now. I watched a little part of a program where I came in, maybe I walked in the door when the TV was already on in some place, and I watched a tiny little bit. There was a presenter, the person whose show it was, and this lady was listening to another woman who had apparently just finished telling an extremely sad story of what had happened to her. And the presenter said, now, what happened to you should never happen to anyone. I feel so sad that you had to go through that. And she expressed a great deal of sympathy for this lady, and understanding and tolerance. And then, when she had done all of that, she said, now, here's what I suggest. Tell your story, and tell it to that person, and tell it to this person, and tell it to the other person, tell it to the milkman, to the plumber, tell it to the priest, tell it and tell it and tell it. And then, don't tell it anymore. Don't relive it. It's not necessary to keep on reliving these things that happened. I gave another example where a friend who had suffered greatly in a marriage with a husband who was very good at the put down. A lot of people are very skillful at this, at putting down other people, and it's the act of making yourself right by making others wrong. That's the mechanism, if there is such a thing. Now, this woman went to great lengths to tell me all of the things that her husband used to abuse her with verbally. He used to say that I didn't do this and I couldn't do that, and he used to tell me that I looked terrible, and he used to tell me that no one would ever, and he used to say that I would, and he used to say I couldn't, and he used to say that I was useless. I said, wait, wait. He was very good at telling you all of these things, wasn't he? And she said, yes, he was. Now, apparently, you were a willing pupil. you were a willing student, because he was teaching you all of these things about yourself. No, I didn't learn all of those things. I don't agree with all of those things. But you told me all of the things that he put you down with. So, in other words, if you look at the way that he put you down as being like a job, now he's not in your life anymore, is he? No, he's not. Then why are you still doing his job for him? That's what you're doing. When you tell me that he said you couldn't do this, when you tell me that he said you were ugly, when he told me that you're doing his job. So all of memories generally, you have the choice to be able to leave them behind. You have the choice to be able to let go. It's not necessary to keep on reliving those memories. Now I'll give you a fun example of how we tend to relive these terrible things that happen to us. Ask anybody for the most embarrassing moment, and they'll tell you something that happened to them which was so incredibly embarrassing that they'll tell you, I just wanted to die. Now, they're telling you about a situation, about an event that made them feel so embarrassed that they said they wanted to die. Or the other one was, I just wished that the ground would just swallow me up. And yet, when you ask them for their most embarrassing moment, they seem to get some benefit from telling it. So maybe what we can assume is that if you have a terrible story to tell about yourself, a sad story, then you need to find a way to leave it, to not tell it anymore. I learned a long time ago that you shouldn't put yourself down. Don't put yourself down, because life can be very cruel. People can be very cruel. There are people out there who will stand in line to put you down for free. You won't have to do a thing. They will stand there and put you down. So, don't join in. Let those sad stories go. You don't have to keep reliving them. I joke with Beth because once, on a couple of occasions, we had one of our vehicles repaired by a man in town, and we were charged a horrendous amount of money, 40,000 pesos. Now it doesn't matter whether you're in pounds or dollars or US dollars or Aussie dollars, it doesn't matter. 30 or 40,000 anything, be it carrots or lemons, or it doesn't matter. 30,000 is a lot. Now, on occasion when we were just riding along, something would come up and we'd find ourselves talking about this horrendous bill that we paid a little while ago. And I suddenly realized, wait, we already paid that bill. We already paid that bill, and now we're paying it again, because when we paid it, it hurt. 30 or 40,000, it hurt. Plus it didn't turn out to be such a good repair. So that's why on occasion it would come up and we would find ourselves talking about it, and the hurt and the pain would come back. The secret is, if you've paid the bill once, and just by going through the disturbing moment, you paid. So don't pay again and again and again. You put that behind you and you move on. Nowadays, I find that we've paid bills that were very, very difficult to pay. And we opposed paying them. We didn't want to pay them. We struggled against it. Well, we argued against it. And finally, I came up with not a terribly clever formula, but I did decide, when you're faced with a huge bill that you're going to have to pay, you can whine, you can gripe, you can complain, you can bitch, you can swear, and then you'll pay the bill. Or you can pay the bill. So, gripe, complain, bitch, whine, pay the bill, or pay the bill and walk away. Now, what I found with Filipinos is, compared to Westerners, compared to foreigners, of which you may have noticed I am, Filipinos will choose the simpler way out, which doesn't involve a whole lot of confrontation and heartache. So, generally speaking, if you're in line somewhere and someone comes up and butts in at the front of the line, which has happened many times, the average Filipino or Filipina will not say anything. They'll let it go. Only a foreigner will go, hey, what the heck is, excuse me, there's a line here. I've been guilty of this myself. And then, if I've done that, when I've walked away, I carry that as a whole disturbing incident. And then I find myself, or used to find myself, telling people about it. You know what happened to me at the bank when I was in the ATM machine and this woman comes up and I live the whole thing again. Until I realized the Filipino way of non-confrontation is much more profound than us damn foreigners realize. So we need to understand that the way we think is something that we are in control of. And that's what we need to learn as foreigners anyway. If you're a foreigner and you're coming over here, I just advised someone who wrote to me and said, I'm going to be coming to the Philippines, and I'm going to be meeting my girlfriend for the first time and her family for the first time. Do you have any suggestions? And I made a couple of little suggestions which are not no-brainers, but a piece of advice which I think is especially appropriate when coming to the Philippines as a foreigner is, if you can keep your mouth shut and your eyes and your ears open. Mouth shut, eyes and ears open. For, well, if you're coming to spend your life here now, your retirement, if you could do that for a month, you would find out that even though you've come from this wonderful first world country that you, let's face it, you have probably fled from, the Philippines as a country, as a nation, both men and women, are, and get ready for this, it's a bitter pill to swallow, they're not eagerly awaiting for you to teach them how to be like the people that you ran away from. They're not here to be your students. I'll leave you with this, the best t-shirt I ever saw with one of those signs on it. It said, I have one teacher a day. Every day, one teacher. Today is not your turn. I thought that was a good one, my favourite. Thanks for listening. This has been something of a meandering session. For some reason I'm getting back into those. Thank you for being with me. If you're still here, wow, great stuff. Bye for now.